I'm more upset with Greg Biffle. He's the most unprofessional little scaredy cat I've ever seen in my life. He wouldn't even fight me like a man after. He needs a freaking whooping. I'm going to give it to him.
Good day, race fans, and welcome to the Intentional Wreck Podcast, the podcast made by race fans for race fans, from the casuals to the lifelong gearheads. My name's Jeff, and I'm here with my fellow hosts Corey and Finn, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. You can also find us on Twitter under the handle at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Find us, follow us, like, share, subscribe, do all that kind of good stuff, and kind of get the word out there for us. Gents, that is post week 10. Dega is behind us for its first iteration. That was an interesting race. I know I had a blast watching, particularly things down towards the end, even if stuff didn't quite go the way that I wanted to in multiple different directions. But I know my day wasn't nearly as bad as some of the drivers who couldn't seem to slow down in pit road or not get T-boned in the middle of the track or other things like that. I've definitely got some opinions on on some of those subjects that I want to get into today. So yeah, I think we've got a good, pretty packed episode to talk to this week. So what did you guys think last week? How are you feeling kind of coming out of Dega? You know, this is always a little bit of a turning point aspect of the season, because we're going to start like itching into a point where a lot of drivers are going to start kind of going, what do I need to do this year?
Sure.
How am I going to find my way to the playoffs? Who is going to, rise up and what's going to happen? So what do you guys think? Where are y'all at right now?
Well, the only interesting thing to me to super speedway races outside of the last 10 laps is green flag pit stops. I still have no idea what the most important strategy is. Pit early, pit late, pit with the big... I mean, it's absolute chaos, and that was one of the only times I've really enjoyed it. Watching super speedway races was how many guys were spinning. I mean, obviously Tyler Reddick was the first, threw that car into the wall head first. The little view they had of I think it may have been Truex's car, of just the 45 sliding around there just going. You just got to think they're just sitting there just shaking their heads going, fucking idiots. And then of course followed up by Chase Briscoe sliding around and almost
His
killing.
looked cooler.
Yeah.
Briscoe's looked cooler.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, he certainly saved the car a little bit, but then had to, battle back from being a lap down there. I mean, I definitely am curious as to that strategy. It's definitely an interesting thing, because you are trying to make sure you get as quickly down the speed as you can, get on pit lane. And then, of course, again, the strategy calls, like, how do we do this? And then if one person or two people mess up, then we don't have a full pack to draft with. Then you get caught by the pack. But other than that, man, these races could be 40 laps. I wouldn't care.
Yeah,
But that'd be a difference.
They're not your thing. I want to be the first person to say it out of the three of us. I am glad that Kyle Larson is okay. I know I'm the resident Larson hater. I dislike him on the track. I don't want to see anybody get T-boned at 190 miles an hour. Kyle, glad you're okay, brother. Could have been way, way worse.
Known podcast listener Kyle Larson.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
He's had you go look at a Kyle Larson Rex montage, and you're going to find out that he's been through the ringer. For every awesome dirt slide job he's got, he's also got one where that whole car's flipping. So,
yeah, and that was the hardest hit. I've been watching now 55 weeks, and that's the hardest hit I've seen. I mean, that thing was...
It's up there, dude.
Priest downshifted and blew Larson up.
Yeah,
I don't think it was anybody's fault, but man.
Yeah, that in-car of Priest was brutal. Yes. Absolutely brutal. Knocked the whole visor off. Also, he was in the middle of downshifting, so like he didn't even really get a whole hand to brace.
Almost a good thing for him. I mean, could you imagine what that does to his wrist? Like, because if he didn't have, like both hands there, but sorry, you go on.
No, just thinking back to last year with what Busch and Bowman had to deal with concussions. It's a huge shocker that both of these guys do not have concussions. Lots
sure.
of wrecks too. The Xfinity race had a whole slew of wrecks. There was a couple guys that were seen in the hospital, kept overnight, but it looks like those guys are okay. So good. Everybody got through a Talladega weekend without any major injuries. I will say it was absolutely hilarious for the in-car Chase Briscoe with his little finger out,
Oh my
braced
god,
up.
so funny.
I
dude.
don't even know how
Yeah.
he's racing. What a trooper for that. So
I can't imagine, dude. I cannot imagine.
I wanted
500
to,
miles like that? Oh my god, that's got to be
Oh.
miserable, dude.
and now
Well,
add that plus the heat, plus like
hold on though, because and I don't know, I don't think Chase Briscoe's in this category, but just about anybody that's watching now or that has ever had a history of smoking cigarettes. I mean, you kind of get used to being able to just, hold them two fingers off the wheel and kind of get used to that. I kind of see that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's familiar
Of
from
course.
days gone by. But one of the things I wanted to go back to when you were mentioning the Larson hit, I really think there's a certain testament to be made about this car with, I mean, you guys saw the picture, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, that hit was so hard, it bent the damn roll cage.
But dude, it caved in the entire door bar assembly.
Yeah,
Like,
Right.
and Larson's
completely caved
okay.
in.
Like, that's the thing is Larson walks away okay from that. There are past eras and past generations of this car that doesn't happen.
Right.
That's simply not the case.
Right.
So I have a feeling that's something NASCAR will put out there for better or for worse as
Right.
far as what what that car is made of, so to speak, that somebody can come in at 190 miles an hour and T-bone the ever-loving crap out of another one of these cars, and a
Right.
driver walks away and is ready for another race. I mean, that's a positive all around for that to be the case. Now, then again, that does raise the question of what does it look like if that car is,
Oh yeah.
spun.
If he
Well-
got hit on a driver's door, it's a totally different discussion.
Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
first, different discussion in that there's way more in between the driver's side than it is not equivalent size of roll bar.
Sure. Yeah.
There's an entire metal plate in there to help protect the driver in those situations. Now, does that protect him from Ryan Preece's car? No, not necessarily. I can't say with confidence, but just to be clear, if they posted a picture of on NASCAR Reddit, both sides of the car are extremely different in terms of what's there to protect the driver versus obviously they're okay with that car crumpling in and eating a lot of the contact. Not crumpling in, right? You don't want the roll cage to bend in like it was very
Right.
violent, but they've taken that car back to the tech to look at it more, and they did reach out to SHR to get Preece's car, and which they did that. So that's cool to see, like all the teams working together to make it safer instead of being like, well, his fault. Hendrick can deal with it. We're keeping our car,
Yeah.
but no surprise. Stewart in the booth. He seemed pretty adamant to. He was concerned about everything. Also, he loves Larson, so makes sense there. Now, I do have a note here. So we're watching the race, and Chase Briscoe's lap down, for all intents and purposes, is about to be the lucky dog once the stage break comes out, and some idiot decides as the field's approaching, he's just going to stay in the middle.
I totally forgot about this until you started describing it just now. Because when you were doing the bullets earlier, I was like, okay, what is he talking about? What Logano thing? Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that. That was wild, dude.
And so he, from what I understand, like Denny was talking about this before, like I guess the view on the track and what was going on, that apparently when he dumped to the center, there was one of the things he apparently did that's like kind of one of more of those subtle on track things is that he kind of juked as he did. So he jerked one way as though he was going to float up to the outside, but then stayed down in the center. And I mean, that is, you are an extra like wheel turn, away from that taking the entire pack out. So,
Oh, yeah.
that if that goes wrong, it goes very wrong. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it
that
was
Extremely
it was-
selfish move. I mean,
It was selfish, but man, it took some skill, dude. I mean,
Well,
of
right.
everyone, it showed everybody's skill that didn't turn into a massive wreck.
right.
It was
That's
was wild.
it's just one of those things that we don't appreciate for like how much everything's on rails and how much they're skating on those things, and then they come across a lap car and they all have to move up or move down, and how well that it's all put together. They do inherently have to trust each other to make the right move because, yeah, one false move as we see everybody spins. But yeah, I felt like that was a pretty pretty knucklehead thing to do. And that's the Joey Logano that we know, right, Corey? That's the Joey Logano that is extremely nice off, but then like on track, it just seems like there's always something that he does. It's just like, damn, dude, really? Like the whole field of Talladega, like for one caution, you're like, but he and then of course he got his lap back. Unfortunately, Briscoe was able to get his later. There was a lot of
who finished? Briscoe finished a lot higher than Logano.
and he did. Well, Logano got spun, didn't he? So
I believe so.
Well, that was also with the fan. Like, how many times, like over the course of that race, did our fantasy numbers go boom, 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 boom,
all over the place?
And I was watching through those first couple of stages, and there was a point where I was like, all right, do I sub in, one person, pull, and end up pulling Logano, like, because I had Gibbs sitting in my garage, and I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna last as well as he's running right now, and the last thing I want to do is drop him in before the end of the second stage, and then have him, drop to the back of the pack, and then Logano makes some run. And I was under the impression, like, well, if either one of those guys is gonna find a way to get closer to the front, it's probably gonna be Logano just based on experience.
Yeah,
but that was kind of its own thing. I'll touch on that a little more a little bit later.
All that said, I don't think that what Logano did was way more egregious than the Gregson Chastain thing. I think the timing of it was a little iffy. Like, I mean, it's not a good move either way. It's hard for me as a newish NASCAR fan to look at what Logano did and think of anything but, okay, yes, but he's the defending champion. So I'm going to defer to him, right? I don't know anything. I'm going to defer to him that, okay, maybe that wasn't the right move. It worked out for him. I mean, it worked, right?
Yeah,
So,
debatably, with everybody else having to respect the move because of how dangerous
all he
it
had
is.
to do was stay in front of Briscoe. That was the whole point.
Right. So, but like, here's the thing. Like, again, this in certain situations, especially if you're lap down, this is a track where you're not really expected to move over per se. Like, say I'm a lap down guy, but because I'm in the pack and I end up for some reason shuffled up to the front. Right? You're not expected, just because you're a lapper and all these guys are up front fighting for the lead, to intentionally blend to the back. As long as you've got speed, right, you get in line and you go where that line goes. In fact, that's the easy way to get your lap back, is to be leading that thing, right? So it wouldn't be the first time that there's
That's a great point.
Right. There would, like obviously every other track, right? If you're a lap down, it's because you're slow when the leader catches you, so get out of the way to not cause problems. Unless you're Bubba Wallace and then your boss moves you, and then all of a sudden you figure out how to gain 0.3 a lap so you can get on the leader's bumper the whole time, which was weird at Martinsville, but that's in the past.
Hey, so hold on. Let me hold on. Go back a second. Let me make sure I understand what it is you're saying. You're saying that instead of going to the middle, Logano should have taken the lead on the outside line?
So the thing is, and I'd have to go back, but there's a difference between the pack caught. It is extremely dependent on how fast everybody's going. That's the first thing for me, right? And my understanding is, if you are getting approached with no draft help, right? The whole pack's coming and it's just you need to get out of the way if you're lap traffic. Just like Michael McDowell did, right? When he had the spun tire and they were coming up the track speed and everybody posed by, he didn't go in the middle and force these guys to figure things out until he finally got, because what's going to happen is they're going to catch you so fast, it's going to stall you out and that whole line at first.
Right.
And
you're
then
going to get back up to speed.
Eventually you will get back up to speed, like what happened. But no, but if here's a situation, say we're out of pit stops, right? And everybody went and green flag pitted. I'm technically a lap down, but I pitted off schedule or with these guys, so I'd come out of the pits with them or with a couple guys, and I have a drafting partner, and then we get caught and they're in the line. We had some speed being carried. The expectation isn't for me to move just because I'm a lap car. Now, just lead the pack that you're in, blend in safely, and go from there. I would say that to that early in the race, being a lap down, because this wasn't as a result of, if I'm not mistaken, this wasn't a result of bad pit track, because you don't go a lap down in green flag pit stops unless you were speeding. Did he speed? I have to remember what exactly it is that put him down.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I feel like it was a penalty or something.
There was a couple guys that had sped on pit lane, and I think he may have been one of them. And then so he went and served his penalty by himself.
Yes, that is what happened.
And
That
they-
Well,
is
there's
what
a
happened.
characteristic
He had a
of
pass-through or
Talladega
something.
in general that makes it a little different than, say, like a Daytona or some of the other super speedways. It's one of the things that makes Talladega unique is that entry towards pit road. And I think that was something that it was giving guys trouble as they were coming in, as far as being able to get down to speed as they got into pit road. If I'm not mistaken, it's something along the lines of basically as you're coming out of 4 and you're kind of coming in, and if you're making that decision, you got to figure out what you got to do.
Right.
It's you have a little more time at Dega to kind of hold the hammer down for a little bit until you come down. So it's really that like impulse decision as you're coming around the turn is, do you let it go and just basically just go completely slow and just shave off a second and a half or so
Right.
by slowing down as you go? Or do you hold the gas coming out of the turn, take that patch of straightaway that you can,
Right.
and then come down into pit road? And I think that that's more so what was happening. I think that was aside from car issues, that was something that was happening to Briscoe.
Right.
But, some of the other guys that were having issues on that, I think they just didn't really understand how to slow. I mean, what was it? Reddick had issues. Briscoe had issues. You've got a couple of younger drivers that seem to have had trouble really understanding when they needed to lift and let it go and get down into pit road.
Well, they
And
also
I-
didn't have any practice.
Yeah.
They had no practice at all. The only time that
Right.
car was on the track prior to the race was
Yeah.
qualifying. That's it.
That's
One
a
lap.
common thread
Right,
too. It's that's
I
a
don't
constant
understand
common
that,
thread.
man. Like I get that it's there's things that go into it, and we can talk about it in depth another time. But I will never understand we can't give these guys 30 minutes of practice, like 30 minutes, like
So here's how it used to work, right? They used to have you'd have the first practice. I think it may have even been 3. It was like practice 1, practice 2, qualifying, happy hour. So the race week would start on Thursday. Practice would occur on Thursday. Qualifying was Friday, and then they'd have a happy hour. I think either Saturday or whatever. It was the final hour of practice. Not to mention they were allowed to test at any track they wanted to during the week. That's what made
Right.
Jimmy Johnson so successful, is that his crew chief they would finish a race on Sunday and they'd be at a different track on Tuesday testing for 2 days, and then they'd link back with the rest of the team on Thursday at the actual track.
I get that, but like I can't. To me, it's like, okay, you don't have to go quite all the way back that far, but for them to not touch the track at speed until the race is crazy.
They want that. Surprisingly
So
enough,
crazy.
the teams want that. It gives the drivers more time during the week, right? To go break their legs snowboarding.
Or their fingers.
Right, or their fingers, dirt track racing. But that's why we see what we're seeing. I can't remember a driver. Do you remember a driver dirt track racing in the early 2000s on his off time? No, I don't
I
remember.
think you were the only one watching back then.
There wasn't.
Three of
There weren't guys. There were not guys that were racing during the off season elsewhere outside of the Indy 500 doing the double. Right, everybody was testing. But now these guys have the free time to invest in their hobbies, or for the family men to go hang out with their families more, because of how long the season is and how big of a grind that is. So, and Tony Stewart mentioned about this, but like they don't need that. They really don't need the testing for super speedway races. And honestly, like testing for pit entry is negligible.
Yeah,
Negligible. That's something that they can practice on their own. They can simulate, do those things. You can do these things in a simulator, right?
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not the same thing, but that's just the advantage that they have. So no, it's not really a NASCAR infringing on the teams, but like it's just a money thing. Not to mention how many times you go out there, you practice, you wreck, you kill an engine, you kill a car.
Yeah, right.
And
Well, I
you
mean, I
waste
get
money
that,
on
I get
that,
that
right?
part of it. It's just
So-
like
So
I don't
they,
know.
these,
I
yeah,
feel like we have seen the races this year that have been more exciting are the ones where the drivers got some practice. And
For
I
sure.
could be like that just feels like what it has been this year to me. So this
gotcha.
one was
Oh,
good, but it's just like
there's-
you see these goofs from Reddick and Briscoe and even Gregson to a degree lifting up a little bit at the end and things like that. It's like, okay, well, would practice have fixed that? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, so Finn, I'm glad you kind of brought up what it used to be, because the televised aspect of practice and qualifying used to be a little bit more. There used to be more to it as well. It used to be a little bit more of a spectacle, so to speak.
So many
with,
storylines.
getting to qualify.
Yeah,
there were a lot more storylines, and another thing that was, kind of fun about those kind of things is that there was a little more build up. It used to look a little more like what IndyCar does now. Like, for example, like they're doing test runs in Indianapolis as we this past weekend. They were doing Indy 500 test runs in IndyCar. Like, it may not have gone, it wasn't going that far back, but it was much more of a full weekend, a full schedule based on what you were doing in your car and making those changes. As compared to what it is now. It used to be, you'd actually have a few days, you get your time, you get out on the track, and you could really dial up what you're going to do with that car. And I don't know if it's a tech factor or what it is that kind of really modifies. We know COVID changed a lot of things with the way stuff operates, but it's just kind of a different deal now.
Right, and that brings me actually to the answer to our mailbag question. So I'll go ahead and throw that in there because it personifies my answer, and then see where you guys think on that. So this week's mailbag question comes from Old Keller, Old Greg. He says, if folks like the Bristol dirt schedule with the heat races, right, to determine qualifying order, there were small four dirt races with 10 cars each, and that gave the qualifying order, as well as we also have the Clash that has its, the Clash, they've got their little heat races to qualify for the race, and then finally, of course, the Daytona has their qualifying races for determine the starting order. Why don't folks want to see similar schedule other tracks? And I say that my answer is in this lane, which is, if NASCAR, and Greg is a truther on to the flat earth extent that we should shorten races. He believes that the reason NASCAR races used to be so long is because people's gear wouldn't last that long. You were trying to build a car. How far can we push speed for 500 miles without killing the car before we get there? But now the technology and the horsepower is low, and the technology is so good, and everything's single sourced on these cars that you're not seeing that happen all that often, right? When was the last time? Well, there's been one time that I recall an engine straight up blowing up this year, and that was Larson at the start of Auto Club. But that used to be a thing, dude. That used to be a thing, Corey. You'd start a race, and 10 laps into the race, somebody's smoking. Their engine blew. They pushed the car way too hard all weekend. They were messing with different things, trying to get... Ryan Newman was running Pocono in third gear the entire time, never shifted up.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I thought about that quite a bit. It used to be, I distinctly remember in years past it being fairly common,
dude,
that, out of a 40 to 43 car field,
engine failure,
the start of the race, it wasn't uncommon to have 3 to 5, drivers gone within those first 15 laps of the race,
and
for
granted,
one reason or another.
And granted,
engines were part of that.
And granted, 2 of those were starting park teams, which don't really exist anymore because of charters.
Yeah.
And then 3, the next group of folks are the guys that, again, pushed the engine too hard all weekend, or something happened and the car didn't like the adjustment. I mean, there's a clip of Jimmy Johnson on a green-white checkered at Indy, throwing it into the turn 3 wide to take the lead while his engine's blowing up. Literally just smoke coming from the engine. They used to drive the absolute shit out of these cars. And that's not really something that happens now. So Greg wants the races shorter, and he likes the style of doing heat races. Hey, we should go in, do heat races. And then that helps set everything up for kind of a shorter but more action-packed main final race of the weekend. Where I agree with that, and the idea is we've got practice, and then what? They can't touch the cars for qualifying, and then, or they can put tires on it, or can't touch it for qualifying, or after qualifying, they can't touch it from the time they qualify to when the race starts, or whatever. If we're going to do something like that, I want it to be wide open. Let's go run heat races to qualify every week, right? And you run, everybody gets in a heat. They go run a 15, 20 lap run, or 20 to 30 lap run, depending the size of the track, right? And then between your heat races, allow you to make any adjustments you want on the car.
I think it's a cool idea, but you go back to what you just said 5 or 10 minutes ago, that the problem is they're going to tear a bunch of cars up, and it's going to cost the teams a bunch of money.
Correct. You're going to see wrecks.
It's double edge.
Right.
And
would it be cool? Sure. I want all the content that I can get, right? But I'd watch NASCAR 4 nights a week, no problem. But I'm also I'm also obsessive about stuff, right? And most NASCAR fans, I feel like, are not going to watch heat races on a Thursday.
But you got to remember, we're talking your car is going through 20 laps, and you're not going out there. If you brought a fast car to the racetrack, right, after first practice or something, like you go and you practice, cool. No need to qualify. We're going to random draw for heats for the qualifying race. So all through practice, you're not touching a qualifying setup. You don't care because it doesn't matter. You don't need a hot lap anymore. All through practice, all through the hour-long practice, you are exclusively trying to get the fastest setup that you can from what you offloaded. Cool. Now, we all get split, and then you're just going to run a 20-lap run, and it's up to you. If you're going to go in there and you're going to say, I want to press to get the highest starting position because, like we saw with Denny and what a bunch of guys said about, like, Martinsville, track position's key. Okay, we're going to go push, but honestly, they're not moving so fast at Martinsville that if they wreck the car, that they couldn't fix it over the weekend. Right, you'd have to really fuck something up at Martinsville. Whereas at a bigger track that's going to have a little bit of a longer race, you know, you're not too concerned about starting position as long as you're not out in the 30s or whatever.
Right.
Maybe you're spending the whole race testing different lines out, seeing different things, and then you go build the fastest race car for the main, and then you make the main 300 miles. Which, again, a good chunk of the races are already 300 miles. The Toyota race we went to, it's not Toyota owners 400 miles. It's 400 laps. That's 300 miles at Richmond. That race went quick. I think, and I think NASCAR already sees, we only get a couple 400 miles. All right, cool. Shorten it to 300. The only things that should stay 500 miles or 600 miles, I just want the Coke 600 to stay. Just keep the 600 there. It's perfect.
Yeah, you got to leave Daytona 500. You'll never convince me that one should shorten. I mean, like,
let's make it 500 cars, like I said last time.
I get what he's saying, right?
You can see that it's called the Beltway in DC, Finn. Why don't you go ahead and just head out to 495?
My honestly biggest concern about shortening the races is all it's going to really do is increase the commercials to live racing ratio, right? We're just going to keep the same amount of commercials and get less racing. That's what will happen. And I'm out on that. I'm sorry. I'm just out. I don't know. I mean, I get why he wants to do it, but I think logistically and from a money perspective, it's not going to happen. Right. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, not thinking so much about logistics, but more so like, hey, what are the thoughts of us, like, as a fan? And that's where I would like to see those things. I'd be okay with NASCAR making that change. But then again, every time they make something that changes back to the previous rules and mindset, like what we saw at COTA this year with no stage cautions, oh God, all of a sudden that's great racing products. So there's that.
Also, to go back a second, I didn't actually answer his question, right? I was answering the side question of should the races be shorter. The whole doing of the heat races thing, sign me up.
Yeah, big fan of that.
Sign me up. I don't know, like, you're not talking about doing it on Sunday before the race, right? You're doing it on
this is
Thursday.
I think this is a Friday, Saturday situation. This is in lieu of qualifying.
Right. So this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, somewhere in there before the race.
Right. I don't see it Thursday. I think practice Friday, get set up. Saturday morning, you run the heat races. Saturday afternoon, you run the Xfinity race.
So to answer the question, that it, like, specifically to address that, I'm not against it. I would think of it maybe as a track specific type of deal. Mm-hmm. I think that you could do something like this or get away with something like this at maybe one of the tracks that you're like, you have some weekends in which, like, the trucks will be at one track and Xfinity and Cup will be at another.
Yeah.
And running something like this would be good because it would be a nice filler in between. And then situations in which you could squeeze in, trucks and Xfinity into the same Saturday and do like heats on Friday night or something like that. That'd be cool. I could see something like that going down and being fun. But I think it would more so, like, I'd like to see it in a track specific environment, where you'd have 2-3 tracks a year, more like you expand on Bristol and Daytona, you make it bigger and you go with something like that. So, So, and to close out with Dega, there was a couple other things that were going on. I mean, there was Chastain's move, which had, some people kind of wondering what was going on with that.
I think that was Noah's fault. To be honest with you, Noah got squirrely. And then in hindsight, while I think it was lame that the one just decides to duck, he had the 5 right on his bumper. If he lifts, he goes too. So
Yeah.
Noah's got to learn. All right, I effed up. Let me slide up and get out of the way. Let me throw back to why I was mad at Bowman. He got at Atlanta. He got squirrely, slid up out of the way, and guess who? Immediately the Toyotas jumped to the inside of him. Bowman decides not to block, stays outside, lets those cars pass. He blends back in, and then he found his way back into the bottom lane. And if it wasn't for Ross Chastain bailing on him, Chevy friends, then he probably gets a top 10. Talking about friends bailing on friends, I hate that NASCAR has built a sport where winning matters over everything all the time, because we just watched Bubba completely get bailed on by Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney and him are best friends in real life. He pushes him to the lead, pushes him into the apron, gets him squirrely, and says, yeah, fuck you. And I know exactly what his spotter said. If I had to bet money, I bet that they go back to the in-car camera Ryan Blaney, or the spotter, and I bet you he hears, you've got the 2 coming high. Go up, go high. Because about 5 car lengths back, Cindric was the first car in the front row, in the top lane, and I can guarantee you, Bubba got squirrely. Spotter said, you've got the 2 coming high, go up. And they just absolutely bailed on Bubba. Now, Bubba did decide to throw a block then, and that's what got him turned. So there is Bubba's fault there. But NASCAR has built a sport where who gives a shit if you finish second or third? You've got to win the race. So I think my proposal is, if you push the car, if you are touching the rear bumper of the car that wins the fucking super speedway race, you get into the playoffs too. Because that's the only thing I can think of that doesn't result in everybody just dumping the leader. There's no point in leading the last lap of a super speedway race, because you are going to get dumped. There's zero friendship.
The guy in second place is in control.
There is
in
zero friendship. He had plenty of time to lift and stay in line with him. Bubba made a mistake by not staying low with Kyle and just assuming that he'll get, because Kyle, if he stayed low with Kyle, let Blaney go, what's going to happen is Blaney isn't going to get caught, like Cindric's not going to catch him in time. It's going to get to the 23 and push him forward, and they'll be the first cars on the bottom lane. So he did make his own mistake by turning himself by blocking.
It was 1 extra block. I mean, that's the big thing is it's so in a short track, it's one thing. In a super speedway, side by side, we saw this all day. You're side by side. So let me get to 2 points. ADHD is because I'm like, oh, I got all kinds of points. My brain's going crazy.
My bad.
So
there are a lot of
no. That is fine. That is me. So to that same point, it's one of those circumstances where at a super speedway race, when you're side by side, and we saw this all day, is that it's constant. It's back and forth. It's back and forth. You're shucking and jiving. So like what it looks like going into turn 1 and coming out of turn 2 doesn't look the same as it does going into 3 as it does coming out of 4. Like by the time that you're hitting those speedways, I personally like, you see the back and forth. If Bubba doesn't throw that block, he has just as much a chance to win that race as anything. So I don't know necessarily what we do as far as that. What I would like to see, I thought it was very promising that we started to see that third line
for sure
develop a couple of times. I do think that when we got to a point where Reddick was starting to lead it in the condition his car was in, that really killed a lot of that. But one of the things you do there, it's important. Try and find ways to encourage developing that third line at those super speedways like Dega, where you have the room to do it, because that's what makes that interesting, because that takes away that second place car ruling everything. Because if you have that other line that's coming up on the other side, on the outside, and you have 3 lines that are, of somewhat equal size, you have the ability to really make some differences in what that race looks like and what the outcome does, because at that point you have no choice but to have at least 3 guys that are just racing each other hard coming around any one of those turns.
The problem is you'd have to do that. The whole third line thing has to happen early in a run, because if they get to where they're going to be having to pit and you're up on that third line, you are screwed. Like, you're
Yeah,
not.
that's that's not a
this is
pit.
last 10
Yeah,
laps.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Just knowing that a third line is viable
Right.
means good things for Talladega because that's what we used to see, bro. There was
Yes.
a package where we used to see that all race long.
Yeah.
3 lanes.
Early 2000s was
Chaos.
watching early 2000s at Talladega were insane because the
Chaos.
amount of cross-ups and the amount of like times you'd have 3 to 5 cars coming down those straightaways and you're just seeing guys just
All over the
swerving,
place.
Right.
just back and forth. Like the leader's over here, second place is like here, he ducks underneath, takes the inside, leader goes outside, and they're just, constant battles happening all the time. And I'd love to see that come back because that is exciting racing right there.
For sure.
But either way, one of the things I wanted to bring up that I thought might be an interesting subject is on Denny's podcast, he had brought up the concept of doing some sort of like a summer bracket challenge where he suggested after the first 10 weeks, you have 10 weeks to get yourself in the top 32. Once that happens, you develop a bracket of those 32 cars, and for the next 5 weeks, you are running head-to-head brackets up until you get through a certain point in the summer. His suggestion was trying to get ratings to come up in the summer and make something a little more exciting to make that happen, which I think there's potential for that. I'm curious on you guys' thoughts as to what that looks like and how that works, or does it work, to come up with kind of a summer challenge series, so to speak, where, you come up with what the prize is, you market it, you come up with a couple of ways to have a NCAA tournament style bracket for the middle of the summer for guys to kind of go head to head and make your own little mini tournament within the season. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's an awesome idea. I think anytime you give people the opportunity to gamble on stuff and win money on stuff, that it's good, right? I mean, it's good for the sport. I don't watch college basketball at all. Zero. Don't care until March. Once that tournament bracket comes out, I'm good. It's just me, dude. Like I love basketball. I played basketball when I was a kid.
It's not just you.
Well, right. I mean, I'm just saying it's kind of just how I think of it. Like college basketball might as well just be the tournament, right? And I don't think that would happen with NASCAR. I think Denny missed his miss.
Hate that so much.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just being real. It should. But Denny is spot on about this. It is an awesome idea. I just think he got the dates wrong. So what I don't worry about the 10 weeks thing. I think it should start with the 600, right? And I was looking at it earlier today after this kind of started coming out. And if you start this 32 drivers at the 600, it's 5 weeks long, right? And you get Charlotte, World Technology, Sonoma, Nashville, and the Chicago street race. And the Chicago street race being the last race of the tournament. And I think you do this every single year between Memorial Day and the race that's on the 4th of July, and you just let that be your little section of the season where you have your tournament. It's an A+. This is a brilliant idea.
I like that idea. Let's take out the Charlotte Street Course. I don't want a gimmick track to be the winner of and I don't want a road course to be the winner.
Chicago Street Course.
Right. I don't.
So okay, that's fine. But like that weekend is usually.
I do like the dates. Yes, started at the 600. It's already a big crown jewel race.
Yes.
So starting off with that, either started off with that or ended off with that, right? But I do think that that's a good stretch. It kind of fits in with the summer thing.
Yeah. You get a short track, you get a road course, you get a couple of speedways, you get Charlotte, which is for my money, it's the best track on the circuit.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. It's a genius idea.
I agree. I think that it's we're no strangers to these things in NASCAR. When we went through all the history lanes, we saw the various thing. Remember that thing where it was like if you finish top 4 in one of the races that was scheduled, the Noble 5. So the next time they have one of those races, you're competing for money. So it's not something that's out of turn. I don't know if it would incentivize you to wreck somebody for those things in a race. That would be my only concern. But yes, you are making a strategy call that says, hey, what's more important, trying to win this race? Because again, winning this race does continue to count for the playoffs. Or do I need to make a strategy call to beat that again, you're trying to beat that person, trying to win the race. But again, will it lead to certain strategy calls? You're like, oh, okay, I have to. They're going to do this, so I'm going to do this. So an interesting situation.
What if the tournament winner got a playoff berth?
That's a situation to consider. While most likely it's going to be someone anyways, but I guess like you could. I think.
I mean, you could
make
come in
sure
30th in the last race and still technically win the tournament, right?
right.
Like
As long as the other person wrecks.
as long as the other person is worse, right?
I'm okay with I'm okay with the okay. I don't hate that. And then what I do want to do is fuck. I just had it on my brain. Fuck, you threw me off. Not your fault though. I had it going and you got me. No, that's a good one. I just think that fuck. I'm gonna have to edit here. Go ahead and talk, Jeff. I'll remember it.
I was gonna say, like, let me carry that because my biggest concern, Corey and I were talking about this earlier today, and that was something that my biggest concern was the stakes, right? Because where is this going? If the idea is to pull ratings, you're gonna pull ratings by pulling people that aren't tuning in every Sunday, right? Regardless, we're watching, and there's a lot of fans that are watching every Sunday anyway. So if you're gonna pull in the casuals who watch the Daytona 500 and then forget about NASCAR, for the majority of the season, if you're trying to pull those folks back in, the stakes have to be that which people are going to go, well, hey, wait a second, like this means this does blank, or this gains this, or this does that. Give those folks a reason to care. And, giving a driver $1 million prize or something like that, you're not pulling those people in with that because they're not really going to care about, oh, here's a millionaire that just won another $1 million. Like that's not going to draw those folks in. So the idea of a playoff berth, maybe there's something like that, or there's points, or there's something that does a lot to, you're going to want to draw those stakes into a way that's going to have the person who does not normally tune in or dedicate their Sunday afternoon to NASCAR to try and go in. And one of the things that, Corey had brought up is if you market this right, you get a FanDuel or a DraftKings or a gambling site involved, and you have them push the ever-loving crap out of it on their front page to do something like that. To, you draw in the gamble crowd, you draw in people that wouldn't normally be, invested so much unless it's a big NASCAR event, so that's something that you could go with that. I feel like as far as driver stakes or something like that, somehow playoffs or points or something like that would have to play a role. Hey, maybe you get your big ruling reversed from the appeals committee. All right,
I do remember my point, but in regards to the gambling, everybody in, to the players of the Washington Commanders and the Detroit Lions, please do not gamble on anything ever. Stop.
Yes.
Stop doing it.
Stop trying to make money gambling and just.
All right. You're already rich. Okay. Don't. What are you trying to earn more money? All right. Anyways. What I was thinking of is in the term of money, which is we talked about it before briefly, but most NASCAR drivers now have contracts built in. They drive for a salary, and some guys, I would imagine, may have clauses in there for a percentage of winnings, but that used to be a thing, right? It was like, hey, do you sign a contract to sign for, I drive for 3 years, $5 million, or does my contract have a percentage of the winnings? Will I bet on my performance to earn potentially more money than I would if I did salary, right? I would like to see a situation like this, that the winner, like that money goes directly to the driver and crew. So it's going to be, 3 to 5 million, and it's, the driver gets 3, the crew chief gets 1, and the team gets 1 million split. Be it split amongst them or however that works, right?
All for it.
That's where I think Denny. Denny said he already said that he thinks the drivers would be in on it, and I think that's what would get the drivers in on it.
Yes,
is a situation
and that's the key. If the drivers want to do it, it will happen.
Right.
I truly believe that. Like if they're all come together and be like, hell yeah, that sounds like fun, let's do that, it will happen.
They'll do that up until the point Ross Chastain spins one of them out. And they'll be like, all right, this is a horrible idea. The one keeps taking
all 5 weeks.
The one keeps spinning his opponent out. So now we didn't get you skipped over it, Jeff, but you caught a dub this week, brother.
I sure did. And and y'all better believe we're not skipping that. And I'm taking my turn at victory lane as Corey shat all over us for weeks and weeks and weeks straight, over and over again. I believe there were numerous quotes about how pathetic and terrible we are because of, how long we've watched racing and how much we've cared about racing and stuff like that. And this noob comes along and clicks his mouse a couple of times, and therefore he's better than all of us. I will be taking my victory lane at the opportunity that I will. So what I wanted to talk about, as I have the floor, I bit my tongue a little bit earlier here because I wanted to take the time to talk about super speedway racing. I know it's not necessarily Finn's bag. And there's other folks that are the same way. There's a lot of people that get way more excited about short tracks and things like that. I personally I'm not a big short track guy. I'm a geek, man. I'm a nerd. One of the things I love about NASCAR and racing in general is the engineering. It's the fact that you take a machine and you fine tune it within the degree of an ass hair to make that, just shave tenths of a second off and make this machine perform at the most optimal, level that it possibly can. And to me, the super speedway is the way that you really get to see that car work at its most optimal performance that you can possibly get. And that's one of the things I love about it. But then again, to that same point, it's also it's also to that is I also like some people find it to be kind of boring. You get your two lines, you're kind of watching these two lines go, and there's things like that. That's fine. I find a certain beauty in that way, in the skill of these drivers to work in that formation for that extended amount of time. I think it's really cool and shows a lot about what these guys can really do to be able to go and find that and maintain that for that extended period of time. I personally find that enjoyable. I think it's cool. I would like to see a little bit more, throwback to past racing at super speedways to get a little more excitement outside of those final laps. Myself, I have a certain appreciation for what those guys are doing throughout the bulk of the race in general. I understand I may be in the minority of that in some ways, but that's kind of just that's the way I look at it. But regardless, I love super speedway racing. That is my favorite. I get super excited about the Daytonas and the Talladegas of the world. I love watching those races. A lot of fun. That is my victory lane, and it's going to be just an ode to super speedway racing.
Beautiful.
Carry on.
You better hope I don't win next week, because it's just going to be direct rebuttal, since I have to respect your victory lane, and you did not give the floor. And as soon as I start talking, you're going to be like a congressman or woman. I've reclaimed my time.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I'm just like, short tracks have
traffic simulator.
It's not that I don't enjoy them. Like I do.
I like seeing the engineering of brakes, but we don't get to see that until Chase Briscoe locks his up, trying to get down to 65 miles an hour.
You're arguing against having fun at 190 miles an hour.
We're having fun at 190 miles an hour, just at Charlotte, not in a fucking traffic formation. All right. Anywho, we're on to Dover. I'm not allowed to get. I'm going to win next week, and it's going to be an ode to mile and a halfs.
You'll have to actually remember to set your lineup.
I'm doing it right after this.
So,
all right, we're on to Dover. You guys are going, and if anything about your guys' luck hits, this race will be Monday. So, yeah, we all went last year. Fantastic time, but yeah, we got rained on, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to bow out this year. But I am curious, knowing that the rain's coming, and then really you need to be leading by around, like your goal is to now lead stage 2. We effectively get what Old Keller wants, a short race. Everybody's going to be racing to the halfway point or stage 2, because that's what makes the race official on Sunday. So we've seen a lot of strategy calls at Richmond with getting Josh Berry to the front. We saw the strategy call with Kyle Busch at Coda. They got him to the front. Do you think that we see something crazy here from one of these playoff needy teams? Or do you think you're just, or are you planning, hey, we're going to finish this race on Monday. Let's just try to put ourselves in the best position for that.
I don't know, but it's gonna be. I'll tell you what, it's gonna be super fun for me because this is like the only track left that I haven't really watched a race on, like because we were there last year and it got rained out. So I don't know. I mean, I think Dover's a super interesting track. I've never really seen it run, and yeah,
Well,
I think you
did
will
you
start
watch
to
the
see
Monday?
some-
Did you watch the race on Monday after?
No, because I was working, dude.
You could watch it. Work. You work from
It
home.
was like, bro, it was like the middle of the day. It was like
they
1
race.
p.m.
Yeah, they race at like noon. It's
and
amazing.
I didn't watch it because I was busy, right?
Oh
But
man, we should have history
I-
lane that. First of
so-
all,
but
the
that-
race was So when we were at Dover,
and that's what I've heard.
I was really concerned last year because we were there. It was overcast, and there really wasn't a lot of passing. I remember watching that and going, there wasn't too much. I was like, all right, this is fine. In the 70
I
laps we
remember
got
who
to
was
watch.
leading quite a bit of that the entire time we were actually present for that race.
Was
There was a certain car of a beautiful white and purple hue that was
it
just
Denny? I
half a
remember.
track ahead of majority.
Really,
of
I
the
don't
field.
remember. This is what I remember watching. I remember watching, and this, you know what? My brain might be going to Kyle Larson at Bristol because I also went to the Bristol race, but watching the 5 navigate lap traffic. But yeah, I couldn't remember who was leading, but all I do is I remember going, and then I watched the race on Monday, and the sun was super bright, and it was a really good race. So definitely worth going back and watching, Corey, because who won that race? Elliott? I feel like Chase won that race.
I'm looking it up right now.
I feel like Chase won that race.
Yeah, that one was a great time.
Hendrick tends to
I
be
sat and watched
really
it
good.
after. I agree with you. Finn.
Actually,
was a
I'll
lot
do
of
it too.
fun.
Let's find some time this week to run some NASCAR heat and watch that race.
Which, by the way, you roasted NASCAR heat. I'm having a lot of fun with that game.
That doesn't mean it's good. It's
right. Well, just to be clear, it's not. It's obvious that I'm not roasting it because I'm bad at it. Pretty decent at the damn thing.
Hey, Chase Elliott did win last year.
Chase did it.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just as bland as possible.
We all know what a
It's
fun
bland
NASCAR
as
game
saltless
felt like.
grits.
Those
Yeah.
old
Second place last year, your boy Finn, Ricky Spinhouse.
Rick Spinhouse
Second place. Maybe he pulled one of these.
strategy call. Well,
one of
they
these
did a full
magic
race, so there
strategy
wasn't
calls.
really
Yeah.
much of a strat call. I'll have to go back. That'll be an interesting one. That's the only race I can't quite remember. Another thing too is thanks to Kyle Busch. Well, thanks to Ryan Blaney spinning out and bailing on his best friend. We don't have any new winners. So
Okay.
Kyle Busch gets his second win.
Hold on.
And
You don't get to do it twice and have me not say anything. Okay. Blaney did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
That
he
is
did. He
my
bailed on his
only
friend.
argument.
he bailed
That
on
was
his
not-
friend.
This was
Bailed on his friend.
a split-second decision at
Bailed.
195 miles an
And he-
hour
and he
with
bailed.
the win on the line.
He bailed.
Every single person that I have heard, including Tony Stewart, who I have a affinity for, immediately after that happened on the broadcast was like, that was just tough racing.
It's Bubba's
both-
fault. Bubba got spun. Blaney still abandoned his friend. Pushed him into the apron. Got him
It's a
squirrely.
race, dude.
didn't
It's a
trust
race,
him.
dude.
Didn't
Second
trust his
place don't
friend.
do
Bailed on him.
shit.
And I will say the root of the cause is NASCAR's rule system. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Still bailed on his friend. As long as we can admit that he does, like, there's no point being friends with Ryan Blaney because he bails on you, the better we can move on from this.
I don't
Finn's
think he wanted
take
to-
on this entire incident is
Kills
these
cats,
hoes ain't
kills
loyal.
friendships.
Right, yeah. He just hates Ryan Blaney. That's what it is.
Kills
It wasn't
cats.
this was hard racing.
Kills cats,
with
kills
the, with the win-
friendships.
with the dub on the line. Back to whatever you were saying. You don't get to bring it back up and have me not say anything again. I held my tongue earlier and let you have the final word. Not number 2, not the second time.
What's the next thing Ryan Blaney's going to kill? That's
Everybody
the next.
this weekend at Dover.
Everybody
Let's
this week
go.
at Dover.
First-
Lock it in.
First place.
Is that your
He's crushing everybody.
is that your prediction here? Are we hopping into this? I mean, I don't really have much more for
no.
Dover as of watch out for rain. You know, it's
God.
it's an interesting track.
Yes.
You know, it's a concrete track. It's really banked turns. You carry a whole lot of speed. There's a weird ass bump out of 3 that really levels the car out. But it's a fun track. I'm excited to see how the package races because again, Bristol was bad last year on most people's radar. Very difficult to pass, kind of boring. Dover's in that same vein. It's the same package. So I think this is going to be another race where it's get out front and stay out front.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, if we get rained out on Sunday and I don't see the race again, I will never buy tickets to Dover ever again. straight up and down.
You got to
Never
start.
again.
Yeah, you just take Monday. That's another thing. That's the spring race right at Bristol used to get rained out all the time, and it killed ratings. That's why they moved it to dirt because now they don't give a shit if it rains over the weekend.
Yeah.
But
Like I don't know what this 2 years in a row. You're gonna lose me.
the Northeast in the spring, what the hell did you think was going to happen?
Well, I mean, I understand that, but like it could rain on Monday and that would be fine.
You know where
just
we need
don't
to be
rain on
racing?
Sunday.
You know where we need to be racing right now? Sonoma.
Well, they're getting there.
So-
It's coming soon.
Right, but the issue is Sonoma this time. Go Google what Sonoma looks like in the spring. It's
Oh, I'm sure it's
fucking
gorgeous.
dude. Hold on. Sonoma Raceway in the spring.
When is that race?
I can share screen for the race. Look at this racetrack.
Sonoma is June.
Oh
9th.
Jesus! Shared window.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
this is what Sonoma looks like in the spring, right? And this is
Right.
what it looks like when we race at it.
Yeah.
Imagine how vibrant all of those cool sponsors on cars will look like racing in that versus when we go there in the desert. It's brutal.
Yeah. Well,
It's brutal. We should be
I'll tell you
racing
that
there.
was a snoozer last year. Oh boy.
Well, another thing too is probably, the difference in weather will change a lot of things. It's a driver's track. That's the one that most resembles the other racings, the Ford F1 types and things like that, is because it's really a true driver's track. I want to say this. He's not my prediction, but I want to bring him up before. Todd Gilliland is driving the fucking wheels off of whatever piece of junk they throw him in every week.
That's true.
Todd Gilliland's finishes
not
have
wrong.
been 10th at Talladega. He had 25th at Martinsville, but he was riding around up front for a while. 8th at Dirt, 15th at Richmond, 10th at Coda, 15th at Atlanta, and then after I think he may have got caught up in races, just had bad days. He also had a 17th at Auto Club. That is a 25th place car that he has got 5 top 15s. 3 of them top 10s in the lap 6 races. Todd Gilliland, and not only that, remember, Todd Gilliland was set to be the full-time driver of the 38, and that got snatched out of him this year, and they said he's going to be splitting time in that car, and they really didn't have a justification other than they want Zane Smith in the car.
Well, I mean, they got his attention clearly.
Dude, he is
insane.
You're
not wrong.
If there's I don't know, Todd Gilliland's obviously he's in Cup and he's running well, so to try to step down. But like if you're Junior Motorsports, if you're somebody that's looking to put a guy in a top ride, maybe a top Xfinity ride, and then move him up if there's no room at Cup at the moment, or if maybe the Penske guys are looking at the 21 and they're going, I don't know where there's a ride that's not a Ford right now, but Todd Gilliland is basically saying, come get me. I could do it on dirt. I could do it at Talladega. I could do it at Coda, and I can do it on the mile and a half. So huge credit. I think we put him in the power rings, but that was just another guy that I just keep noticing. Like, how does this guy keep doing it? How does he keep finishing up front?
That's awful nice of you to say about Chase Briscoe.
Briscoe's killing it, man. 3 top 5s in a row, baby. Listen, I told you, just wait on Chase, man. He'll come around. He's a superstar in the sport. It's just things have to, they got to work some things out. But do we have predictions for this weekend at Dover?
I think we can drum some up.
What do you?
I'll just wait for Finn to make his, so then I can recognize that I made the same pick. But why don't you go first this week, Corey?
Okay. Well, you're probably not going to like it very much there, Jeff, but I'm going to take Dennis Hamlin.
All right.
That's who I'm going to
like that.
I think there's a do factor with Denny. He's going to get his win at some point. Denny is going to win a race in the regular season this year. It's not a doubt in my mind, right? And this seems like, having not gotten it at Richmond, having not gotten it, at Phoenix, which is kind of a pseudo short track, I feel like he's strong on those short tracks. And I'll take Denny. Sure. If I get to go first and pick whoever I want, why not?
There you go.
I don't think I've picked Denny before, but yeah, this could be the week. He led 68, 67 laps at this race last year. So we'll see.
What do you got?
Just don't rain. Just don't rain, please. Denny win, don't rain.
I'm going to go with the greatest number to ever drive at Dover. I'm going to go with the 48 for the first time on my race predictions.
Yeah. This
Bowman.
is the one where Finn can confidently go and say, because Alex Bowman has run Dover very well over the last few years.
Yeah, he didn't look too hot last year, but he does have a win. Greg Ives is like the Dover master. There's something that Greg and just history lessons for you here real quick. Greg Ives was Alex Bowman's crew chief all the way up till last year. Obviously Blake does this stuff now, Blake Harris. But Greg Ives, there's something about Dover that I got. He was the car chief or the car engineer for Jimmy Johnson during his run, and they won Dover more than anybody ever. They got this track on lock. So I don't think he's a lock to win, but he's going to be, we've seen the pace the 48's had. If there's a race where they can come out and win the race, I think Dover is they're good at this package. It's a pretty decent track. He's confident, and that's the difference that Alex Bowman needs at a track to win in my brain. Confidence. When he's confident, things are good. When he's anxious and struggling, not very confident himself, that's where we don't see that he can drive the wheels off of. So I'm going to go with the 48 for the first time on my predictions.
And I'm going to actually, I didn't have that same pick. I do think Bowman's going to do well. I think he runs well at Dover. I'm going to go with about as close to a hometown pick as you can get on this one. And I'm going to pick the Jersey boy and take Martin Truex Jr.
Okay.
And predict it on this one.
He's a Dover master as well.
Yeah, he runs Dover well. This
is.
is as close to a hometown track as you're going to get from him. When we went last year, there is a lot of 19 presence in that area. Generally, if you find any NASCAR fans in that, Eastern Pennsylvania area, like Jersey, stuff like that, you will find most of the time they're usually pulling for the 19. So that's always kind of an interesting dynamic when you go there. You kind of find his territory. But in that same token, he runs Dover well. He's going to be quick. And he's also, I personally am looking more in that do theory area that Corey's looking at, the same way that I'm going to feel that way if Denny doesn't have that win by the time we hit Pocono. I'll tell you now, my pick for Pocono is going to be Denny, because that track has always been his jam. But in general, I think Dover is, that's Truex territory. If there's a race that he's going to take, if there's one that is going to build his momentum that we expected him to carry after the Clash, it's going to be Dover. So I am curious to see how he goes, but that's who I'm picking to win.
Let me ask you guys a question. What do you think are the chances, if you had to give a percentage, that we get a new winner this week?
We both picked
the 9. I would say
picked guys with no win yet.
I'm 90% sure because of all the guys that need it and the fact that Elliott's back and fast. And that's who if I didn't choose the 48, the 9 is he already won here last year, doesn't have a win now. That's the real, I would say if I had to choose a race favorite, I want the 48, and I think the 48 can win. But yeah, that's where I would say there's plenty of guys that had speed at that Richmond race, which is really close to what we're going to see. Yeah. And then Buescher, right, who won the Bristol race last year in the playoffs, which is the closest race, I think, to Dover. So, yeah, I think there's plenty of guys that can come out here and win.
Yeah, it should be genuinely exciting. I think it's going to be fun, and I really hope we don't get rained out. I'd love to actually witness an entire race at Dover
rain
on
dance.
Sunday. That'll be fun. So
do a rain dance, but don't dance too much at the super speedway races. Then people want to take their clothes off. So,
yeah,
or at the NASCAR
at the Monday tracks, as we saw at Richmond. We got to keep that to a minimum.
See me naked.
Yeah. You know what? I can't hear what they're saying, but it totally sounds like they're saying, take your pants off. Listen, sir. Nobody at that entire speedway, you could pull the entire place, was thinking that you should take your pants off right now. That's just
all these kids. Definitely.
Yeah, Jesus. That was his first thought was, let me go to this public, large, family-friendly atmosphere, and you know what everybody wants to see is my drunk, shirtless ass starting to take my clothes off. That's what everybody wanted. So I think that as we make our way off the rails, that's gonna do it for us, and let's call it now. So everybody that's listening, if you're still here after all that, please make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio under the name Intentional Wreck. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, submit to the mailbag. Please talk to us that way, communicate with us. You can find us on Twitter at intwreckpod. That's at INTWRECKPOD. Find us, follow us, like, share, subscribe, and talk racing. Everybody have a good time on Sunday. Let's hope it doesn't rain.
No rain.
You can take what you want from me.